Hello, and welcome to Labor Talks. I'm your host, Laurie Gruber. Today's special guest is Nick Brenner. Nick currently works for the United Union Roofers, Waterproofers, and Allied Workers Local 96. Welcome to Labor Talks, Nick. It's good to have you here.
Thank you, Laurie.
First of all, why don't we tell the viewers a little bit about who you are?
I was born and raised right here in the Eau Claire, Wisconsin area. I grew up in a very blue-collar family. My father's been in the United Union of Roofers and Waterproofers since 1980. My mother had an in-home daycare. I went to North High School in Eau Claire and graduated in 2003. After high school, I worked at Menards for a couple years, and when I thought I had it figured out what I wanted to do, I enrolled in school to be a surgical technician. I did that for 1 year, and then that summer, I needed to have a summer job to make some money, and my father said, "Why don't you come roofing for the summer?" So I did, and I think I started in early June, and by August, I think I already realized I wasn't going back to school. I liked the paycheck, I liked the job. My dad had been very pro-union my whole life growing up. He was always very involved with our local, and in turn that got me very involved. I made sure I never missed a union meeting and just really liked my job. I liked having time off in the winter. I liked being outside, collecting a nice paycheck, and it worked out really well for me.
Between ROTC and roofing, my brother put himself through college.
Oh, yeah?
Because I know that's what he did too, through the summers to get him extra money for school, you know, so. And then tell us about the Roofers Union and the area that your local covers.
We're a union, or a local of approximately 1,200 members. It's based out of the Minneapolis Twin Cities area. We have 60-some contractors currently. It always changes a little bit. Sometimes we gain a couple, sometimes we lose a couple. Our jurisdiction, we cover the Dakotas, all of Minnesota, and like the northern 53 counties in Wisconsin.
That's a big area.
We
That's
cover a huge area. My area personally is northern 53 counties in Wisconsin. I also have 10 counties in southeast Minnesota.
So I'm not the only one on the road all the time.
I'm on the road quite often, yep. I drive a lot. I average, in the busy time, probably close to 1,000 miles a week.
And how are your apprenticeship classes going?
Oh, wonderful. We've had record attendance, I believe, for the third straight year. We're pushing just about 300 apprentices a year through.
And then they take their journeyman class. How long is the apprenticeship class?
It's 3 years of classroom time, and the Metro guys in the Twin Cities come in 1 day a week from November through April. So it comes out to 144 classroom hours a year, and then our outstate people, which would be people in Wisconsin, Duluth, the Iron Range, St. Cloud, southeast Minnesota, they come in for a week at a time. So they're not having to make that long drive once a week. They come in for a week at a time, and it all balances out to 144 hours a year for 3 years, and then you have to have 6,000 on the roof hours as well. So once you've completed your 3 years of training in the classroom and 6,000 hours on the roof, you'll receive a journeyman's card.
Nice.
And it's transferable anywhere in the world where there's a roofers union. You can go and receive journeyman wages.
And is it going to be possible maybe in the future to have those classes done by closed circuit TV or like UVU on the computer so that they don't have to drive? That they can, or is it a class that's like a hands-on class?
It's very hands-on. We cover all the basics. The first year we cover all of the Osha trainings, Osha 30, a lot of it's classroom safety type stuff, and then we get them into some of the hands-on with the single-ply roofing systems. That would be considered phase 1 or first year. The second year was phase 2. That's a lot more of the single plies, but we get into more extensive stuff of it, like details and certain specs and that stuff like that. And then the third year is more of the built-up roofing and steep slope roofing, whether it be old hot tar roofs that went on for many, many years. And there's actually still some areas they still use those. Steep slope, whether it be ceramic, tile, or slate roofs, plain shingle roofs, anything that's...
So you deal with all the materials then?
Yep, and throughout the 3 phases, we expose them to pretty much everything. And there's also waterproofing and air barrier we cover in there as well.
Because like our house is a galvanized steel roof. So, I mean, I like that better than the asphalt. It's going to last longer.
Yes.
But, and then what types of roofs and waterproofing do they work on? So it's everything then.
Yep. The main one would be called like EPDM, or in layman's terms, I guess, rubber roofing. That's probably about 50% of what goes down. And mind you, the projects we're working on generally are commercial, industrial. It's very little residential work. Big, large
A lot
buildings.
of flat roofs?
Yep, almost all flat. I would say at least 90% of it is flat roofs.
Flat roofs.
Yep.
Do you do corrugated steel as well?
Nope,
like you see on some
that's
commercial
the
buildings?
sheet metal guys that do that.
And I know that a lot of people have problems. You hear different people talk about the problems with flat roofs versus the person that has to go roof up on one of the high-pitched or the steep pitches. You know, and I know my husband said he would much rather work on a flat roof, but that they tend to leak more
They do tend to leak more, but the new, like the TPO, the white roofs they have out now, the rubber roofs like I mentioned before, they're very easy to repair, and they're very cheap to repair. So I mean, if you do have issues with them, they all come with a warranty, anything from 10 to 30 years. So I mean, if anything goes on in that warranty period, it'll be covered, the cost of repair will be covered by the manufacturer. Okay. And they're quite simple to repair.
What types of special training do your guys have to deal with asbestos?
There's a supervisor class or a site supervisor class, and that, like if someone's going to be a foreman on a project, they will have to go through a 1 week or a 5-day training, which comes out to 40 hours, and then once a year after that, they'll have to go in for 1 day and do what they call an 8-hour refresher. So at the most, you know, they do that 5-day class right away, and then so they don't forget this stuff. You know, it's a lot of book work and stuff that can probably go in 1 ear out the other. So
if you're not dealing with it all the time, right?
Yep, exactly. And asbestos just isn't that common, and we still come across it generally in the average company, maybe a couple small jobs a year where you'd have to deal with it or handle it.
It's more a matter of recognizing it, right? You don't do the abatements, do you?
Yes.
You do?
Yep,
Okay.
we'll do removals. And then, so there's the site supervisor, which is the 5-day, and then just to work on that crew, you go through initially a 2-day class. And then after that 2-day class, then once a year you have to do a 4-hour refresher course. So the same thing, even if you go a couple of years without working with it, without handling it, you're never going more than a year without, you know, having your knowledge refreshed.
Well, that's good. And I know, because I know there's a lot of security and safety precautions that have to be taken when you're working with asbestos.
It's very nasty stuff to work with.
Causes a lot of lung problems, right? Mesothelioma
Asbestos, just one problem after another. Smoking, smokers, they say they're enhanced by 20 times over.
Wow.
So if someone is a smoker working with asbestos or they have asbestos exposure, they're 20 times more likely.
To end up with asbestosis.
Yes.
And your union works closely with Osha, correct? And in what
Yes.
ways?
Well, like I mentioned before, our apprenticeship program, any of our apprentices come through, the first thing they do is go through and receive the 30-hour Osha training, which is essentially, it's a 30-hour class, hence the Osha 30, and that's the very first thing they do when they come into our apprenticeship program. And we don't like to overdo the book work, classroom stuff too much. That just gets boring, and they only take in so much. You know, you hit a wall in a day, where if you're sitting in a classroom going through a textbook, reading or studying on stuff that may not be that interesting to you, you're only going to take in so much a day. So legally, the most you can train on OSHA per day for like a 10-hour or the 30-hour class is 7 hours a day. We do 4 hours a day. That way.
And then come back to it a little more the next day.
We
So they
do
still
4
get their
hours
hours
a day
in, but
until they have their 30 hours of the training. So that's the first part of their training. And then we also go through the rigging and signaling. That's all any of like the slings or anything working with a crane.
so you got the signals
for the
right?
crane, and also the rigging, whether you're using steel cables, the woven straps, any of the different stuff that you would rig a load with, essentially. We go through and teach them all the safe ways to do that. We have Osha certified instructors. I myself am an Osha certified instructor, so I can legally teach those classes and issue the cards. So when our apprentices leave after the first year, they'll have an OSHA 30 card, a rigging and signaling card, and a HAZCOM card.
For working with hazardous materials.
Yes,
correct?
That's correct,
Okay.
yep.
And then how does a referral hall work? Nobody actually works for...
I'll drop back for a second. I still wasn't
Okay.
quite done with OSHA.
Oh, go ahead.
We also, with OSHA, like one of the new big things that just came out was the new silica standard. And due to in flat or commercial roofing work, there's a lot of hammer drilling involved generally. So with the new silica standard, we work very closely with OSHA on stuff like that, and we'll let them monitor our job sites and help them in studies, or we'll let them come out to our jobs and do studies so we can see where we need to be to comply and work with them in that regard.
So really more hands-on for them, both ways.
Yes, it's
So they
beneficial to us, it's beneficial to them.
If they
And it
catch
just
something
develops a
going on
good
right away, they
relationship.
can get it fixed right
So
away.
many people are so terrified of OSHA,
OSHA.
even
Yeah,
some
they
of our
are.
contractors are and stuff, but get to know them.
But if
reach
they're
out
doing
to
the
them.
job properly-
Utilize them as a tool. They're people. You know, they're not bad to deal with. Don't be scared of them.
Well, it's like wearing a seatbelt. If you do what you're supposed to, there's no reason to be afraid of a
Absolutely.
policeman pulling you over because you don't have a seatbelt on.
Absolutely. We're a couple different times contractors have called me on issues and asked me how to handle something. I'll tell them, call OSHA. And I think they're going to hang up on me. They're like, do what? Like, they think I'm insane if I tell them to call OSHA for something. Another one we just worked with them on was there's a bunch of new crane certifications, classes, and licenses you have to operate a crane or a boom truck. And we worked with them on that. We're very involved with getting them information as to what a roofer may be doing with a crane, the different things we're doing with it.
Loading the shingles, loading the supplies up
Yes,
to the roofs.
swing and tear off of a roof, just the different stuff that we're doing with it and how to effectively do it safely.
Is that because of all of the crane problems they've had in the last several years? The crane collapses and stuff like that, why they're maybe concentrating on that more?
That's probably a good part of it, yep. And they've actually been talking about this new crane cert for many, many years, and it keeps getting postponed. But we have, our members and our crane operators have been certified for quite some time. We have an employee through our union who's actually certified through the NCCO, and he can legally certify
Other people.
crane operators for any of our signatory contractors.
And you guys aren't really working on the real tall skyscrapers doing the roofs, right? They're, like you said, more commercial buildings, warehousing, things like that?
In the Twin Cities, we have some contractors that work on some pretty tall buildings. Yep.
Well, I know there are quite a few downtown there.
Yep.
Okay, now, can you explain how a referral hall works?
Yes. We have, I believe, currently 63 different contractors that are signatory to Roofers and Waterproofers Local 96. And if we just talked about somebody getting a journeyman's card, so if someone is a journeyman or an apprentice for that matter, and if they're unhappy where they're working, if their current employer that they've been working for runs out of work, if they're moving, for any different reason that you would need to switch jobs, you can contact us, and we always keep in good contact with the contractors we're signatory with as to what kind of help they may need. Whether sometimes they'll call and say, I have a job starting and I could really utilize 2 apprentices and a journeyman or a foreman. And we keep track of which contractors need which type of help and refer them out that way. Something else we're starting to see a big shift in the construction industry is minority hiring goals. So we will know which workers are available, and there also maybe be female hiring goals on construction projects. So if we have those workers available, we can
Keep track of it and help
Yep.
send them out to those jobs.
try to get the quotas met for those certain projects.
Okay. And then do you have enough supervisors that are bilingual? Either Spanish or Hmong or whatever types of languages
Yes.
come in?
Yep.
Okay. Tell us why prevailing wage is so vital.
Wow, I could
we
go
know
on
that. We know
about
it's an
this
important
one
thing.
for
I mean,
a long, long time. To start with, I feel it just creates a good level playing field for contractors. Contractors, they're all bidding at the same rate. All their workers are getting paid the same, so if a contractor tries to get greedy, doesn't get a job.
underbids or whatever so that he can get that job so he can underpay his workers, you mean?
Yep. There's just countless things that prevailing wage is good for. Indiana revealed prevailing wage, I believe, in July of 2015, and there's been just extensive studies done there as to what the repeal has done there, and it's essentially they have gained or benefited in no way whatsoever by repealing prevailing wage. It's dropped the construction workers' wages. They have a lot more construction workers now without high school diplomas.
Without proper training, correct?
Yep. Number of military veterans that are in the construction field has decreased from it. Just one problem after another. Also, one of the big issues is it brings in out-of-state contractors. A lot of contractors will come in from other parts of the country or states with much lower construction wages. So they'll come in and undercut local contractors on those projects, come in and do the job, and then leave, and all that money leaves the area, and you never see or hear from that contractor ever
Well,
again.
and usually the job is substandard then too.
Yep, and if there are issues with it in the future, generally you can never track down that contractor ever again. You'll never find them. There's just countless reasons why prevailing wage is such a good thing.
So for people that don't understand prevailing wage, if a contractor comes in from out of state and his wages are normally lower, but we have prevailing wage here, they have to pay that prevailing wage on that job.
Yes, a prevailing wage, it would be a minimum wage. It's a minimum wage for a publicly funded construction project.
Okay.
Everyone on that project will have to make that wage, and they break it down by trade too. So prevailing wage for a carpenter may be one thing, for a roofer or a plumber it may be different, and generally speaking in strong union states they will usually base it off of union construction wages.
Well, and to me, anytime that I know that there's prevailing wage on that job, I know that those workers have been trained properly.
Absolutely.
Because normally if you have a contractor that doesn't pay prevailing wage, he's also not training his people. Not for the OSHA, not for any of the other standards that most of the union guys go for.
He's not going to spend the money in an apprenticeship program to get them properly trained like you just mentioned. It also ensures a living wage for any worker on that project. Anybody who's working on that public works project is making a wage that they can support a family on.
And that they can support a family even if they're laid off through the winter time.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's another thing that people are like, well, they're only working 6 to 8 months a year. They need to be able to make enough money that 6 to 8 months a year so that you don't lose that skilled person come the next season.
People who are working on prevailing wage projects are not collecting food stamps and things of that nature. They're earning a good living and they're sacrificing their bodies and working very, very hard to do it.
And their insurance covers them all
Very
year
well
round. It's
deserved.
not like that they don't have it.
Absolutely. They have pensions, good health insurance. Yep.
Now, you guys have scholarships that are available to your members too, right?
We have many different scholarships we're affiliated with. Some of them are not directly just through our local union. Some of them are affiliated with the AFL-CIO, but there are some that are just through our local union. One of them, like I mentioned, the Minnesota AFL-CIO, they have a scholarship that is awarded to, they have one specifically for building trades families, and then one, I believe, for general industry. It could be members of any union household. Another one, the Martin Duffy Adult Learner Scholarship, that's continuing education for union members. So any union member who wants to better themselves, to go back to school, they could maybe take a drafting class or anything of that nature to further help them along at their job. Any union member could utilize that. One that is just specific to our local is a Twin City Roofing Contractor Association Scholarship, and that is just specific for children of our members. They award 2 of those a year. They're each $1,000. and it's just a nice little perk for
Does it have to be that they have to go into roofing, or they can go use it for whatever school they want to go to?
any school they want to go to.
That's excellent.
It has to be an accredited school, I believe. I don't think, there may be some private colleges that are not eligible for it, but any public school, any public technical college, any of the common schools. There's also a building trades credit union scholarship. Now, one of our fringe benefits, not to get sidetracked here, but we have what's called a vacation fund, and for every hour our members work, depending on the area they're in, between $1.50 or $2 an hour goes into what we call a vacation fund. And they can draw that out whenever they want. Originally it was set up so, because our guys don't get paid vacation, so every hour they work, that money goes into that account, and then you can either call that bank, or they can send you an ATM card and you can draw that money out whenever you would want, or you can let it build up. A lot of our people let it build up over time, and then they take their family on vacation. I try to do the same thing. And due to us, many of the building trades in the Twin Cities work with the Building Trades Credit Union, and they have a scholarship for union members' children as well. Another one is the Nellie Stone Johnson, and that is for minority students of union families. So anyone who could be a minority, you could apply for that scholarship as well. If you live in a union household, whether your parents or a sibling or anybody in your family is a union member, you could also apply for that scholarship. Another one is the Labor Leadership Grant. This is to help defer costs for union men and women to attend classes, programs, or conferences held for affiliated members seeking to develop their abilities and skills as a union leader. They issue one for a woman and one for a man. Those are done annually. So anybody who wants to get more involved with their local union, if there's a lot of different conferences and stuff held through the year. I know, I believe I've seen you at many of them before. And it helps defer the cost to go to those and get more involved with your local union.
Excellent. I know, like, our union has a, and I've been here 24 years, and I didn't find out about it till it was like 20 years. But any relative of mine, direct relative, like my husband, or and if I had kids, my kids, can get a free online school.
Really?
Up to an associate's degree. And I'm like, how come I didn't know about that 25 years ago?
And they've had it for that long.
My husband went back to school. He's a robotics machinist. And he went back to school for computer integrated manufacturing. And here he could have taken a bunch of those classes with that online school. And there are a lot of unions that are finding out that that's available to them that they didn't know about either. Because I was at, I think, a machinist conference, and they were telling them the same thing. And a laborers conference, they were telling them the same thing. So this particular company works with a lot of people. So you and I will have to look into that one later and see if it's available for your guys too.
Is that, I was going to ask, is it for any union members?
It's set up with specific international unions, not through the local, but through the international. So that's when we're back at the labor hall, maybe we can look into it and see.
If the roofers are affiliated.
Because it's pretty nice, associate's degree for nothing.
Does it pertain to the actual member or their spouse?
The member,
children?
their spouse, their children, and I think grandchildren too.
Really?
Stepchildren.
Really with that. Wow, that's wonderful.
So we'll look into that one and see, and if it is, that'll be another one you can add to your list. Now, if someone would like to join the Roofers Local, how would they go about it?
There's a number of ways. The one way I suggest to people generally is contact any of our 60-some signatory contractors. They're all listed on our website. They're very easy to track down and figure out who they are. Get hired by any of them, and a union rep or one of the business agents or business manager will come right out to the job site and sign you in within a week or so of you starting. In order to do that, you're going to need to be able to pass a drug test. A driver's license isn't a requirement, but it's very much preferred. You're going to get more hours. It's just going to be very beneficial to have a driver's license. You'll be a better asset to your employer.
They don't need to have a Class A or a Class B CDL, do they?
You will get a bonus if you do. Yep, due to driving our cranes, generally speaking, to operate and drive the boom trucks most of our contractors have, you need a Class B CDL with an air brake endorsement. There's a lot of contractors that will pay $1 more an hour for someone who has that. I know of a couple in western Wisconsin right now that are offering anything from a $250 up to $1,000 bonus for any of their existing employees to complete and receive that.
Will they let them use their trucks then to take the test?
Yes, they
and
certainly
the training?
will.
That's even another plus.
And one of the contractors actually is paying his workers their hourly rate to come in on their days off and such to drive his trucks around and practice.
Oh,
so they're
that's
good and
excellent.
prepped up for their test.
Now, is Class B is within your own state, right? Class A is
A Class
multiple
B
states?
is for a straight truck.
Okay.
So it's over a certain weight, like maybe a big UPS truck, or a semi, will be a trailer, a two-part truck.
Gotcha.
Cranes are generally just labeled as, or a school bus is another example of where you need a Class B CDL.
Okay.
And they all have air brakes, and that's one of the endorsements that you need on your Class B CDL.
Just be able to do the air brakes. So I mean, that's a major plus if they could go then and get that CDL for their families too, then to get that extra.
Oh yes,
pay.
and then like you said, if something happens where if they hurt their back or lost a leg in a terrible accident or something, they still have that CDL and they could still go drive somewhere else and make a living and support their families. It's
Excellent.
a wonderful thing to have. It makes you absolutely invaluable to your employer. Most of our contractors, even if they don't have any work, they're not hiring, if somebody comes through their door and fills out an application and says they have a CDL, they will get hired.
Excellent. Well, we learned a lot today about the roofers. That's our program for today. My thanks to the viewing audience and to you, Nick, for coming in, making today's program possible. My thanks also to the folks working behind our cameras from Valley Media Works. They not only make the show possible, but they give us a voice for our working family, an outlet, I should say, for our working family voices. A final note, Labor Talks is on channel 993 twice weekly, and you can also use your favorite search engines with keywords Labor Talks and CBC TV to find us on YouTube. Thank you for joining.
Television is made possible by continuing community support. If you would like to volunteer or make a donation, you can contact us by calling 715-839-5067.